My name is Martin Hale. I am 68 years old, and for 46 years I worked at Falcon Steel Manufacturing in Dayton, Ohio. I spent most of my life repairing industrial machines that were too heavy for ordinary people to understand and too important for anyone to ignore. I believed work was how a man protected his family. For decades, I left home before sunrise and returned after dark. I missed school plays, birthday dinners, and more weekends than I could count. Whenever my wife, Linda, asked whether I could take a day off, I gave her the same answer. Someone has to keep this family secure. At the time, I thought that was wisdom. Years later, I understood it was only an excuse that sounded respectable. My son, Derek, grew up with a father who paid every bill but was rarely sitting at the dinner table. I gave him a house, a college education, and every opportunity I never had. What I did not give him was enough of myself. Linda used to tell me that Derek had inherited my stubbornness, and to her sons, "That combination will cause trouble someday," she would say. I always laughed. Linda passed away 12 years ago after a long illness. Since then, I had lived alone in the small house on Willow Creek Drive. The rooms were quiet, but they carried memories. Her favorite chair remained beside the window. Her garden tools still hung in the garage. Derek visited occasionally, though never for long. He had married a woman named Claire, and together they lived outside Cincinnati. They traveled often and talked about investments, promotions, and expensive vacations. My nephew Lucas was different. Lucas was the son of my late brother, Raymond. Raymond had owned a small auto repair shop outside Springfield. 6 years earlier, he had collapsed beside a vehicle lift and died before the ambulance arrived. Lucas was 23 when it happened. He held his father's hand until help came. The next morning, he opened the shop because 4 customers were waiting for their vehicles. That was Lucas. He never complained. He never asked anyone to rescue him. Still, I knew the shop was struggling. Every time I visited, something needed repair. The roof leaked during heavy rain. The old diagnostic equipment was outdated. Lucas worked 12-hour days and drank coffee that went cold because he forgot it on the workbench. 2 weeks before my retirement, Falcon Steel called. They told me the company wanted to honor my 46 years with a formal gala at the Grand Meridian Hotel. Executives, employees, and local business leaders would attend. A regional television station planned to broadcast the event. I called Derek immediately. "Son," I said, "they're putting me on television. 46 years. I want you and Claire there." The silence lasted several seconds, then Derek answered. "Dad, we already booked a trip to Aruba. Claire has been planning it for months." "The date is fixed," I told him. "The company can't move the event," he sighed. "It's just another corporate dinner. You'll have hundreds of people there. You probably won't even notice we're gone." Claire took the phone. "Martin, try to understand our side. We already paid for everything." I understood perfectly. That was the problem. I ended the call before my voice could reveal how deeply those words hurt. For nearly an hour, I sat alone in my kitchen. The coffee machine clicked off. A truck passed outside. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. I kept thinking about all the birthdays I had missed while working overtime. Had I taught Derek that family celebrations were unimportant? Had I spent decades building security for him while forgetting to build a relationship? Then I thought of Lucas. I called the repair shop. I could hear metal tools striking in the background. "Uncle Martin," he said, "everything okay? I have a retirement gala next Friday," I told him. "Would you come as my guest?" The noise stopped. Then Lucas said something Derek had never said. "I'd be honored, not I'll see. Not maybe. Honored." On the night of the gala, Lucas arrived wearing a dark suit that was slightly too large around the shoulders. He looked uncomfortable, but he stood beside me proudly. The ballroom was filled with nearly 300 guests. Cameras were positioned near the stage. During my speech, I thanked the workers who had stood beside me through recessions, accidents, and difficult years. Then I noticed 2 empty seats near the front. They belonged to Derek and Claire. For several seconds, I could not continue. Lucas quietly placed his hand on my arm. That small gesture helped me finish. Then Falcon Steel's president stepped onto the stage, holding a sealed folder. "Martin," he said, "your retirement gift is not the only surprise tonight." The room became silent. I had no idea what he meant, neither did Lucas. But before the evening ended, both our lives would change. And my phone would begin ringing with calls from the son who had decided my retirement was not worth attending. Falcon Steel's president, Harold Bennett, stood beneath the bright stage lights with a sealed folder in his hands. Behind him, the company logo filled a massive screen. The cameras continued recording, and nearly 300 people watched from their tables. I looked at Lucas. He looked just as confused as I was. "Martin Hale has given this company 46 years of loyalty," Harold said. "He has worked through layoffs, economic downturns, equipment failures, and some of the most difficult periods in our history." The audience applauded. I nodded politely, expecting a watch, a plaque, or perhaps a bonus. Then Harold continued, "This year, we asked Martin to identify the person who best represents the values he leaves behind. The person he believes would continue showing up, even if everything else disappeared." I turned toward him. Nobody had asked me that question, at least, not directly. Harold smiled. "Martin chose his nephew, Lucas Hale." A camera moved toward Lucas. He froze. "Lucas has spent 6 years keeping his late father's repair shop alive," Harold explained. "He has worked long hours, repaired equipment himself, and continued serving his community, despite financial hardship." Lucas lowered his eyes. He had never liked attention. "Tonight," Harold said, opening the folder, "Falcon Steel is awarding Lucas Hale an $850,000 legacy grant. The funds will help expand his repair shop into a modern, full-service automotive center." For a moment, the ballroom became completely silent. Then the applause began. It grew louder until people stood from their chairs. Lucas stared at me. His hands were shaking. "Uncle Martin," he whispered, "is this real?" I could barely speak. "Yes," I said, "it's real." His eyes filled with tears. Lucas had watched his father die on the concrete floor of that shop. He had spent years trying to protect the business Raymond left behind. He had repaired broken equipment with used parts and postponed his own needs to keep paying his employees. Now, for the first time in years, someone had told him that his effort mattered. He hugged me. The cameras captured everything. I did not care. When the ceremony ended, several executives invited us to the private reception. Lucas thanked them, but I could tell he was overwhelmed. We left instead. 2 hours later, we sat inside a small diner near Route 40. The place had faded booths, laminated menus, and coffee that tasted stronger than it should have. Lucas ordered apple pie. He kept looking at the papers Harold had given him. "I don't understand," he said. "You understand," I replied. "You just don't believe it yet. I've spent 6 years trying not to lose the shop. Now they're talking about new equipment, more service bays, and hiring people. You earned the opportunity." He shook his head. "No, I just kept going. Sometimes that's what earning means." My phone rested face down between us. At 9:37 p.m. it buzzed. I ignored it. A minute later it buzzed again. Then again. Finally I turned it over. There were 12 missed calls. Everyone was from Derek. I frowned. "Is something wrong?" Lucas asked. "I don't know." By 10, there were 28 missed calls. The television broadcast had ended less than an hour earlier. I knew Derek and Claire had seen it. At 10:19, the first message appeared. "Dad, what did you do?" 2 minutes later, that money should have gone to me. Then Claire sent a message. "We watched the gala at the hotel. You need to contact Falcon Steel immediately and correct this. I read the words twice. Correct this, as if Lucas receiving help was a mistake. As if my nephew's years of sacrifice meant less than Derek's expectation of inheritance. Another message arrived. You gave away my future on live television. I placed the phone back on the table. Lucas studied my face. Do you need to call him? No. Are you sure? Yes. But I was not angry. That surprised me. For years I had imagined confronting Derek. I imagined shouting about every birthday he ignored and every visit he cancelled. Instead, I felt something colder, something final. It was like a door quietly closing. At 11:40, the phone showed 96 missed calls. By midnight, there were 114. I answered none of them. The next morning, I called Derek at exactly 8 o'clock. He answered before the first ring ended. Dad, you have to fix this. Good morning to you too. Call Harold Bennett. Tell him you misunderstood the question. I didn't misunderstand anything. That $850, zero was supposed to stay in the family. It did. You know what I mean? No, I said. I don't think I do. Derek's voice became sharper. You gave Lucas my inheritance. It was never your inheritance. You're punishing us because we went on vacation. I didn't punish you. Then why did you choose him? I looked through the kitchen window. For years, I had searched for complicated explanations. Now the answer was simple. The company asked who represented my legacy, I said. I chose the person who showed up. Silence filled the line, then Derek spoke. So you're choosing him over your own son? No, I chose Lucas because he was there. You chose not to be. He said nothing, I continued. You called my retirement a boring dinner. Lucas called it an honor. You're making this a bigger issue than it is. No, I replied. I'm finally seeing it for exactly what it is. Derek hung up. I placed the phone on the counter. For the first time, I did not call back. 3 weeks later, my attorney contacted me. She had an important question about my estate. And after everything Derek had said, I realized my answer might change far more than he expected. 3 weeks after my conversation with Derek, my attorney called. Her name was Margaret Sloan. She had handled Linda's estate after she died and had managed my legal affairs for more than a decade. She was not the kind of person who wasted time. Martin, she said, I've been following the situation with your son. Everyone seems to know about it. The retirement broadcast was popular, she replied, but I'm calling because of your estate plan. I leaned back in my kitchen chair. What about it? Do you want to review your will? I had been expecting the question since the gala. I had spent many nights thinking about what I owned and why I planned to leave it to Derek. My estate was not enormous, but after 46 years of work, careful saving, and a modest life, I had built something meaningful. There was the house on Willow Creek Drive, my retirement accounts, and the cabin Linda and I had purchased near Lake Erie. The cabin was the most personal of all. We bought it the year Derek was born. For nearly 30 years, our family spent summers there. Derek learned to fish from the old wooden dock. Linda cooked breakfast while sunlight filled the kitchen. We held birthdays, anniversaries, and holiday dinners around a long table that barely fit everyone. After Linda died, I continued visiting. Derek did not. He had not stayed at the cabin in almost 7 years. During that time, he had complained about the drive, the lack of reliable internet, and the cost of maintaining the property. Then, 2 months before my retirement, a mutual friend told me Derek had discussed selling the cabin after I was gone. He had already estimated what the land might be worth. At first, I refused to believe it. The cabin was not simply property. It was the last place where Linda still felt close. Martin, Margaret asked, are you still there? Yes. What are you thinking? I don't want to change my will because I'm angry. Then don't, she said. A legal decision made only from anger usually creates more problems. I agree. But you can still change your plans because your understanding has changed. Her words stayed with me. My understanding had changed. I had believed Derek valued the things I worked to preserve. Now I knew he valued what those things could become after being sold. I asked Margaret to prepare a new trust. The cabin would remain in the family. It could not be sold without strict conditions. Lucas would become its caretaker and trustee. Derek would still be allowed to visit. He would not be excluded, but he would no longer inherit the right to sell the property. Lucas was not receiving the cabin as a reward. He was receiving responsibility. When I told him, he looked uncomfortable. "Uncle Martin, I don't want Derek thinking I took something from him." "You didn't. He's already angry about the grant. That anger belongs to him." Lucas placed both hands on the workbench. The shop had changed quickly since the grant. New equipment had arrived. Contractors were expanding the service area. For the first time, the building looked like it had a future. "I don't want money to divide the family," he said. "Neither do I. Then why make me the trustee? Because you understand that some things are worth maintaining even when they don't make money." He did not answer. I continued. "Your father built this shop. You protected it. You didn't walk away when it became difficult. That tells me more about you than any speech could." Lucas finally nodded. "If you trust me," he said, "I'll take care of it." I know. Margaret completed the documents. Derek learned about the trust from her office. He called me that afternoon. I watched his name appear on my phone. For several seconds, I considered ignoring it. Then I answered. "Why did you change the cabin?" he demanded. "Hello, Derek. Don't do that." "Margaret told me everything. She told you about the trust. You gave control to Lucas. I gave him responsibility. You're taking my inheritance. You still have access to the cabin. That's not the same." "No," I said. "It isn't." His breathing grew louder. "You're doing this because of Aruba." "No, then because I missed your gala." "No, then why?" I looked toward the photograph of Linda beside the window. "Because I learned you planned to sell the cabin." Derek became silent. "Who told you that?" "So it's true. That's none of your business." "It became my business when you planned to sell something your mother loved. You'd be dead." "What difference would it make?" The words struck harder than I expected. Not because they were cruel, because they were practical. To Derek, the cabin was valuable only after I was gone. I spoke quietly. "It makes a difference to me now." He accused me of choosing Lucas again. I told him the same thing I had said before. "I'm choosing the person I trust to protect what matters." He ended the call that evening. I drove to the cabin alone. The lake was calm. Wind moved through the trees. I sat on the old dock until sunset. For years, I had believed love meant leaving everything to your child. Now I understood something different. Love did not require giving someone control over every part of your life. Sometimes love meant setting boundaries before resentment destroyed what remained. 4 months passed. Lucas's new automotive center opened in September. Then one evening, Derek called again. This time he did not sound angry. He sounded lost. And for the first time in years, he said something I believed. 4 months after the retirement gala, my phone rang late on a Sunday evening. I was sitting on the porch of my house on Willow Creek Drive. A cup of coffee rested beside me, slowly losing its warmth. The neighborhood was quiet, and the sky had turned dark blue. Derek's name appeared on the screen. I watched it ring. For months, our conversations had followed the same pattern. He called because he wanted something changed. The grant, the cabin, the trust. Every discussion ended with blame. This time I let the call go to voicemail. I was not trying to punish him. I simply did not have the strength to repeat the same argument. A minute later, my phone displayed a new message. Voicemail received. I waited nearly an hour before listening. "Dad," Derek said. His voice sounded different. There was no anger, no demand. I don't understand how things got this bad between us." Then the recording ended. I sat quietly. Of all the things Derek had said during the past year, those words felt the most honest. He did not understand. For a long time, neither had I. I looked across the porch toward the empty chair where Linda used to sit. She would have known what to say. She always understood Derek better than I did. The next morning, I called him. He answered after the second ring. "Dad, I listened to your message." He remained silent. "You said you don't understand how we reached this point." "I don't. I think I do." "Then explain it." His voice was cautious. I looked through the kitchen window. "It didn't begin with the gala," I said, "and it didn't begin with the grant." "Then when?" "Years ago." Derek sighed. "Dad, we don't need to bring up everything from childhood." "We do." The line became quiet. "When you were young," I continued, "I believed providing money was enough. I worked overtime. I missed birthdays. I missed school events. I kept telling myself I was doing it for you." "You were. Maybe. But I never asked what you needed." He did not answer. "You needed your father," I said. "Instead, you got someone who came home exhausted and expected everyone to be grateful." My throat tightened. That was my failure. For the first time, Derek did not interrupt. "I spent years building a life for you," I continued, "but I never noticed you were learning to live without me." "Dad, no, let me finish." I took a breath. "When you became an adult, I expected you to value the things I valued. Family dinners, the cabin, my retirement. But I never taught you why those things mattered. I only expected you to understand." "So this is your fault?" Derek asked. "No." The answer came quickly. "I made mistakes, but you made choices too." He was silent again. "You called my retirement boring," I said. "You saw the event as something unimportant because you didn't want to change your vacation plans. I didn't know it mattered that much. You didn't ask." That ended the conversation for several seconds. Finally, Derek said, "I thought you would understand." "I did understand." "You did, yes. You chose your trip. You had the right to make that choice. But you gave Lucas the grant. The company asked me who represented my legacy, and you chose him. I chose the person who came." Derek exhaled slowly. "You keep saying that, because it's true. I'm your son." "Yes. Doesn't that mean something?" "It means a great deal. Then why does Lucas get everything?" "He doesn't. From where I'm standing, he does." I looked at the family photograph on the wall. Derek was 8 years old in the picture. Linda stood behind him with both hands on his shoulders. "You see money," I said. "You see the grant and the cabin. What else am I supposed to see?" "You should see responsibility." He did not respond. "Lucas did not ask for the grant," I continued. "He did not ask for the cabin. He showed up because I invited him. He worked for years without expecting anyone to save him, and I'm being punished because I didn't." "No." "Then what is this?" "It is the result of what I learned." Derek's voice became quieter. "What did you learn?" "That I cannot force you to care about the same things I care about." The words hurt, but they were true, and I learned I should not keep giving you control simply because you are my son. He said nothing. "I still love you," I told him. "Then why does it feel like you chose him? Because you think love is a prize that can be won. That's not fair. Neither is expecting an inheritance you have not earned." His breathing changed. Then he asked a question I had not expected. "Can I come over?" I looked toward the empty chair. "Yes," I said. "You can." Derek arrived that Saturday. He stood at the front door, holding a small bag of pastries. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "I didn't know what to bring." "You didn't have to bring anything, I know." We sat at the kitchen table. The conversation was uncomfortable. We talked about his job, Claire, the trip to Aruba. Eventually, he apologized for missing the gala. It was not a perfect apology. He explained too much. He defended himself. He blamed poor timing. Still, he apologized. I accepted the words without pretending everything was repaired. Before leaving, Derek looked toward Linda's photograph. "I miss Mum," he said. "So do I." He nodded. At the door, he stopped. "Dad?" "Yes. Do you think we can fix this?" I thought about the years between us, then I answered carefully. "I don't know." His face fell. "But we can stop making it worse." That was not forgiveness. It was not reconciliation. It was simply an open door. Sometimes that was the most honest thing a family could offer. A week later, Lucas invited both of us to the opening of his expanded automotive center. I accepted. Derek said he would come too. And when the day arrived, I discovered whether he truly meant it. The opening day of Hale Automotive Center arrived on a bright Saturday morning in September. I parked across the street and stood beside my truck for a moment. The old repair shop looked completely different. The faded sign had been replaced with a large blue and silver one. New service bays stretched along the side of the building. Fresh concrete covered the parking area, and several employees moved between the garage doors. Above the entrance, the new name read, Raymond Hale Automotive Center. Lucas had chosen it himself. He wanted everyone to remember the man who had built the original shop. Near the front door stood a bronze plaque. I walked closer and read the inscription, "Built by Raymond Hale, preserved by Lucas Hale, supported by Martin Hale." For several seconds I could not speak. Lucas came outside wearing clean work clothes and a smile I had not seen in years. "You made it," he said. "I wouldn't miss this." He hugged me. Then he pointed toward the building. "Come inside. I want to show you everything." The new center had advanced diagnostic equipment, modern vehicle lifts, and a customer waiting area with large windows. Lucas had hired 6 additional mechanics. The shop that once struggled to survive could now serve hundreds of customers every month. But Lucas remained the same. He still carried a pencil behind his ear. He still forgot his coffee on the workbench. And whenever someone praised him, he became uncomfortable and changed the subject. Around noon, more guests arrived. Local business owners entered. Former customers shook Lucas's hand. Several Falcon Steel executives came to congratulate him. Then I saw Derek. He stood near the entrance beside Claire. For a moment he looked uncertain. I walked toward him. "You came," I said. "You asked me to. That's not why I'm surprised." He gave a small smile. "Fair enough." Lucas noticed us. He approached Derek and extended his hand. "Thanks for coming." Derek shook it. "Congratulations. The place looks incredible." "Thank you." The two men stood quietly. Their relationship had always been distant. They were family, but they had never spent much time together. Then Derek looked toward the new service bays. "You really kept the old shop going by yourself?" "Mostly," Lucas replied. "For 6 years?" "Yes." Derek nodded. "I didn't realize." Lucas shrugged. "It needed someone." Those words stayed with me. It needed someone. That was what family had become in my life. Not promises, not titles. Someone who stayed when leaving would have been easier. Later, the Falcon Steel president arrived. Harold Bennett shook my hand and smiled. "Martin, your legacy grant created something remarkable." I looked around the building. "No," I said. "Lucas created this. The grant only gave him room." Harold nodded. "You chose well." Derek heard the comment. For a second, I expected him to become angry. Instead, he looked at Lucas and said, "I think he did." That was the first time Derek had acknowledged the choice without blaming me. The opening ceremony began at 1 o'clock. Lucas stood near the entrance with a microphone. He thanked the employees, customers, and local community. Then he looked at me. "My father taught me that work matters," he said. "But my uncle taught me that being present matters too." My eyes filled with tears. "I named this center after my father because I wanted his work to continue," Lucas said. "And I placed my uncle's name on the plaque because this story would not exist without him." The crowd applauded. I noticed Derek watching me. His expression had changed. After the ceremony, we stood together near the old workbench that Lucas had refused to replace. A paper coffee cup sat beside a set of tools. It had already gone cold. Derek pointed at it. "Does he always do that? Every day," I said. Lucas laughed. "I get busy." Derek smiled. It was a small moment, but it felt real. Later, Derek asked if we could speak privately. We walked outside. "I've been thinking," he said. "That can be dangerous." He laughed softly, then his expression became serious. "I was angry because I thought you were taking things from me. I know. But maybe I was already treating them like they belonged to me." I waited. "The grant wasn't mine," he continued. "The cabin isn't mine yet either. I acted like I had a right to decide what happened to both. That was the problem. I understand now. Do you?" "I'm trying to." That answer was better than a promise. He looked toward the building. "I want to visit the cabin." "You're welcome any time. Could we go together?" I thought about Linda. She would have liked that. "Yes," I said. We visited the cabin 2 weeks later. Lucas joined us. We repaired the old dock, cleaned the kitchen, and cooked dinner together. No one discussed money. No one argued about inheritance. For one evening, we were simply family. That did not erase the past. Derek and I still struggled. Some conversations ended awkwardly. Some apologies remained incomplete. We did not return to the relationship we once had. But perhaps that was impossible. You cannot rebuild the past. You can only decide what to build next. I began visiting Lucas Automotive Center most Saturdays. Sometimes I helped organize tools. Sometimes I sat in the waiting area and watched customers arrive. Lucas always made coffee. He always forgot to drink it. Derek visited occasionally, not every week, not perfectly. But he came, and I noticed. Years earlier, I believed loyalty meant working until your body could no longer continue. Now I understood something else. Loyalty was not measured by years, money, or promises. It was measured by presence. Who answers when you call? Who arrives when there is nothing to gain? Who stays when life becomes inconvenient? Those people are your real legacy. I still loved my son. I still missed the years we had lost. Some nights, the pain returned quietly, but I no longer waited for one perfect conversation to repair everything. I had learned to appreciate smaller things: a visit, a shared meal, a difficult apology, a son who finally chose to come, and a nephew who had shown up before anyone asked him to. One autumn evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee beside me. The sun disappeared behind the trees. My phone remained silent. For once, I did not feel alone. I knew who showed up for me. I knew who was learning, and I knew that love was not proven by what people expected to receive after you were gone. Love was proven by who stood beside you while you were still here. That knowledge did not solve everything, but it gave me peace. And after 46 years of working, sacrificing, and trying to build a future for everyone else, peace was the one thing I finally understood how to keep.